everyone, welcome to another edition of the Bible, one book, one verse at a time. Today we're looking at the shorter book of Lamentations. Now, the book of Lamentations expresses the grief and all of the different emotions of the people of Judah after the destruction of Jerusalem by the armies of Babylon, after like a 2-year-long siege of the city, which led to a massive famine in the city and all of the stuff that goes along with that. The incredible destruction as the armies came in, tore down the walls, destroyed the temple and all the important buildings, and then carted the people off into exile while leaving only the poorest there to look after the land. Now, this book expresses all kinds of emotions as the people process through all of the stuff that has happened. They're sorry for what they have done that has led to this place, recognizing that ultimately it is their fault. They continued to walk away from God, and then finally they deserved this judgment. But then they're also angry at the way in which God exacts this judgment. They're shocked at the level of destruction and chaos that has happened. They're confused at how this could have happened in the first place. They're a little bit hopeful at certain points that maybe this same God who promised destruction and then now has carried it out will be a God who also comes through on his promises of restoration. And even at the end, they're a little uncertain about whether God might have actually abandoned them. Maybe this is the last straw and God is actually done with them. Now, that all of this expression of all of these different kinds of emotions is done in a rather structured or orderly way. Lamentations is made up of 5 different chapters, of 5 different poems which tell and express these emotions from 5 different kinds of perspectives. Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all acrostic poems, which means they follow the Hebrew alphabet, or the Aleph-bet. Now, chapter 5 abandons all of that orderliness, though it also has 22 verses or 22 lines. And it seems, or it feels as though the grief and the anger and the confusion and the despair have burst all of the bounds of logic, and trying to understand or explain away what has happened is abandoned as the author simply expresses their grief to God and wrestles with all of these things. And this brings us to what I would say as the key verses in Lamentations. It sums up the story, it serves as the conclusion, and it does not neatly tie up all of their grief in a nice little bow. In fact, it leaves a question for us. And it's helpful for us to remember that in the midst of our grief, questions and anger and confusion and despair are all legitimate, and in fact, the Bible says are all able to be expressed to God. Suffering in silence is not a virtue in this book. And so these are the conclusion from Lamentations. It's chapter 5, verse 19 and following. You, Lord, reign forever. Your throne endures from generation to generation. Why do you always forget us? Why do you forsake us so long? Restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return. Renew our days of old, unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry beyond measure. What I love about that conclusion is it expresses the sorriness for doing the wrong thing, confusion that God continues to punish in the way that he has, a call for restoration, but then also that uncertainty about whether or not maybe this is the last straw. And so if you're in the middle of a place where you're wrestling with some of these emotions, maybe read through the book of Lamentations and recognize that it's okay. And in fact, these emotions are invited to be expressed to God.